Hello, everyone. I am Jeremy Johnson, dramaturg at Houston Grand Opera, and welcome to HGO Digital's live pre-show, our first one since the holidays and first one of 2021. Happy New Year. For those of you who have been with us before, welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to our pre-show event. I hope you have a great time learning a bit more about our digital programming. This is the place where where we'll introduce you to tonight's performance and give you some background on what you'll see. The main event begins at 7:30 Central on hgo.org/digital or through Marquee TV. So make sure you're ready to watch on those platforms. As I sit here looking at my notes for tonight, something just feels wrong about pretending that nothing is going on in the world. Like many of you, I've been incapable of tearing my eyes away from the news for the last 50 hours. And all I really want to say about it is, I love this country and I love opera. And I think there's more to music than simply entertainment. There's healing involved at a level that we don't understand. People are trying to figure it out. There are people working with doctors and scientists about how music affects the frequencies of our very bodies. And that's a powerful thing. And, there's part of me who's sitting here alone in my bedroom office during a pandemic, thinking to myself, oh, I really shouldn't be saying any of this. I'm just an opera nerd. What do I know about, especially our nonprofit status, right? And, what we can and can't say to have that nonprofit status revoked. So I won't say anything at all political. But what I do want to say is that opera and music invites empathy. And that's the true power of music and opera, is connecting with other people, loving human beings, being able to see them for who they are, understanding other situations people are in that you'll never be in yourself. And I think we need more of that. And I think there's no way for our country to heal without art and music. So with that, let's turn to our recital tonight, our first HGO digital presentation of 2021. And I hope it's as healing for you as it will be for me. Tonight's recital features mezzo-soprano Sasha Cooke and pianist Kirill Kuzmin. Sasha was last seen at HGO as a soloist in Verdi's Requiem in 2017. And before that, she appeared in our 2013 production of Showboat in the role of Magnolia Hawks. Kirill was last seen for us in our last solo recital release in November, collaborating with tenor Arturo Chacon Cruz. And we are so happy to have Sasha and Kirill perform this recital for you. This recital, like all of our HGO digital presentations, is generously underwritten by Sarah and Ernest Butler, and we are deeply grateful for their support. We literally could not have done it without them. This pandemic has done all sorts of things to the opera industry, and HGO Digital is because of their generosity. Thank you, Sarah and Ernest. The recital will go live at 7:30 Central on hgo.org/digital or Marquee TV. But first, I'm just going to take a minute to remind all of you watching here on Facebook or on YouTube that this video you're watching now, if you're hearing me say these words, this video is not where the recital itself is going to take place. This is our pre-show stream. The recital itself will be streamed on HGO's website and through Marquee TV. You have three options for watching the recital. One, download the Marquee TV app on your smart device, which includes a smart TV, and just create a login for free. Number two, you can go directly to marquee.tv in a web browser. Simply create a login and you can access the whole HGO season for free. Or number three, go to hgo.org/digital. Use our HGO login credentials or create an HGO login, and you can watch the whole season there for free as well. So make sure you're logged in and ready to go. If you have any questions or comments during the pre-show tonight, feel free to type them into the comment boxes on Facebook or YouTube. We'll be able to see them and respond on here live. So let's talk a little bit more about the program itself and what you'll be hearing tonight. Sasha Cooke is a remarkably versatile artist, having sung music from every major era of Western classical music, from early Baroque to the most recent of world premieres. She's performed a number of Handel roles and has a celebrated interpretation of Hansel in Humperdinck's Hansel and Gretel, having sung it at Seattle, LA, San Francisco, and a role she would have performed at the Met this winter were it not for the coronavirus pandemic. She appears frequently with orchestras all over the world, known particularly for her interpretation of Mahler on the concert stage. Before she recorded her recital live from the Cullen, we had the chance to sit down with her and ask her a few questions, virtually of course. Here's Sasha telling us a bit about her background and how she became a singer.
Well, I'm from Texas. My parents are professors of Russian at Texas A&M, and before that I was born in California. Started piano when I was 4 or 5, and then kind of got into choir, viola, and then choir sort of opened the path to studying voice. And I got into Rice University, which was to me sort of a surprise, because I really didn't think I would be a singer. I always admired singing, but I never imagined that I would do it as a profession.
Something that stands out about Sasha as a singer is her affinity for and skill in new music. She's created roles in Mark Adamo's The Gospel of Mary Magdalene with San Francisco Opera, the title role in that one. Laura Kaminsky and Mark Campbell's As One with American Opera Projects. Joby Talbot and Gene Shear's Everest with the Dallas Opera. Mason Bates and Mark Campbell's The Revolution of Steve Jobs with Santa Fe Opera. And again, the title role in Nico Muhly and Nicholas Wright's Marnie with English National Opera. She has a 6th world premiere role on her schedule this spring, again with composer Joby Talbot and librettist Gene Shear, titled The Diving Bell and the Butterfly with the Dallas Opera. She also has premiered works by many more composers and librettists on the concert and recital stages, and that's a facet of her artistry that we'll get to hear later tonight. During the pandemic, Sasha has commissioned 16 art songs from 16 different composers and 16 different writers. She calls them Songs in a Time of Silence, and 3 of them receive their world premiere tonight in this recital. We'll talk more about those and the rest of her repertoire in just a minute, but first, let me go through our quick reminder for those of you who have just tuned in that this stream isn't the performance stream, this is our pre-show stream. The recital itself will be available on HGO's website at hgo.org/digital and through Marquee TV at marquee.tv. Sasha opens the recital with a cantata by Gioacchino Rossini titled Giovanna d'Arco. Rossini composed the cantata in 1832 to a text by an anonymous author. The text is spoken from the point of view of the 15th century French heroine Joan of Arc. She was born a peasant in the northeast of France during the second half of the 100 Years' War. England and France had been at war with one another and at civil war within themselves between the noble houses and territories who supported the other side. They had been at war with small periods of uneasy peace since the early 1300s. So now over 100 years later, the name of the war is a bit of a misnomer. Over 100 years later, Joan was a teenager in the early 1420s. She claimed to have had visions from St. Michael the Archangel and other saints telling her to save the Dauphin of France, Charles VII, and the French people. She was able to gain a private audience with Charles VII, who should have been king of France at that time, but due to the conflicts in the war was unable to be coronated. The royal court was successfully persuaded of her divine vision in 2 different ways. First, she successfully recounted the outcome of a battle hundreds of miles away 2 days before the messengers arrived with the news of the outcome of the battle. That vision alone earned her the audience with Charles VII. Then when she arrived at the court to have this audience with the Dauphin, she claimed that she would know him at once, despite never having seen him or met him. So the nobility put this to the test by dressing Charles VII up as a member of the court, and he entered among the other noblemen before the king was meant to arrive. Joan immediately knelt before him, called him her king, and the French were convinced of her divine inspiration. She then said that she would lift Le Siège d'Orléans, or the Siege of Orleans. The French military had been under siege by the English at the city of Orleans for nearly 6 months. During that time, they launched only 1 or 2 offenses against the English that failed miserably. Joan of Arc arrived in Orleans, boosting the morale of the French military and leading them to a religious victory over the English that would lift the 6-month siege in only 9 days after she arrived. Over the next year, she traveled with the French military through a few more victories, but she was eventually captured by French noblemen who had shifted their loyalty to the English crown. She was tried for heresy and a handful of other trumped-up charges and was burned at the stake. The war would end about 20 to 25 years after her death with a French victory, and Joan of Arc was credited with turning the tide in favor of the French military. The Pope ordered a posthumous retrial, which cleared her name of any wrongdoing. She became a French hero, and in the early 20th century, she was beatified and canonized a saint in the Catholic Church. Joan of Arc has inspired innumerable works of art over the centuries: statues, paintings, works of classical music. Rossini's Cantata in 1832 was written only 13 years before the Verdi opera of the same name, Giovanna d'Arco. And the Russian composer Tchaikovsky also wrote an opera about Joan of Arc titled The Maid of Orleans. That was another name the French bestowed upon her, La Pucelle d'Orléans, or the Maid of Orleans, or the Virgin of Orleans. In Rossini's Cantata that you'll hear tonight, the text, written from her point of view, refers to the Virgin heading into battle. She's talking about herself in the third person, so don't be confused about what unnamed person she's talking about. The cantata is about 15 minutes long and is structured into 2 recits and 2 arias. The cantata form is a chamber music form that came about toward the end of the Baroque era and the beginning of the classical era, when instrumental chamber music became much more prominent. Cantata translates roughly to sung, to imply that it is a sung version of chamber music. Italian cantatas tend to be written for only 1 or 2 voices. They were a bit more dramatic in nature. You could think of them almost like tiny miniature operas. German cantatas, on the other hand, tended to be written for 1 or 2 voices as well, but also often had choruses written into them, and you could think of them almost like little miniature oratorios. This is an Italian cantata, little miniature opera, and the piano begins the opening recit with depictions of horses riding into battle and the calm descension into night. I want you to listen for 3 different musical techniques Rossini employs in the opening recit: a chromatically descending triplet figure that ushers in the night, a quickly repeated note indicating the call of a trumpet or horn that leads the troops into battle, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, and the rushing triplets arpeggiating the chords which Rossini uses to illustrate the horses and military. Joan's first aria in the cantata is about how her mother will miss her as she leaves for the siege of Orleans. She says, "Oh, mother, you will search for your daughter, but no one will answer." But then she says that every mother and every Frenchman will envy her mother, because Joan is leaving to go save the French at Orleans. Listen for the piano when Joan sings about how every mother and every Frenchman will envy her mother. The piano repeats those arpeggiated triplets, and this time in a very triumphant manner. The second recit describes one of Joan's divine visions. She talks about her prophetic vision as she receives word from the angel who calls her to battle. And she calls him, in this fictionalized dramatic telling of the tale, she calls him the angel of death, knowing that her involvement in the 100 Years' War will lead to her execution. But she has been called, and she says she will go, and the cantata ends with a very fiery, flashy aria of her saying that victory will be hers, so give her a sword and she'll march into battle. Here's what Sasha had to say about programming Rossini's Joan of Arc cantata.
Well, I chose the Rossini because this was going to be a recital in an opera house. And I thought, why not sing something that's slightly operatic and that features one of our most famous opera composers. And it's a great piece, and the pandemic has provided an opportunity for perspective and choosing repertoire I want to do. So this is a piece that I've thought about but never worked on, and now given the opportunity to have time to work on it, and Houston Grand's invitation seemed like a good moment.
Following the Rossini cantata, Sasha has programmed a cycle of 8 songs composed by Robert Schumann, the husband of pianist and composer Clara Schumann. Clara had the single greatest effect on Robert's life and career. Clara was the daughter of noted piano teacher Friedrich Wieck, and she quickly became a child prodigy and concert pianist. She met Robert in 1828 when she was only 9 years old and he was 18, 9 years her senior. Robert had had musical training throughout his life, but at this point was torn between music and law. He was studying law when he heard Clara play, and he was so impressed with her talents and technique that he was inspired and wanted to leave his law studies and devote himself again to the piano. So he started studying with Clara's father. But an unknown injury or illness that affected his hand made becoming a concert pianist impossible, so he turned to composition. Over the next 9 years of studying with Clara's father, the two fell in love, and when she turned 18 and he 27, he proposed and she accepted. But her father did not approve of the marriage, and since she was under 21 years of age, Robert needed Friedrich's approval. He sued his future father-in-law, and a long and torturous legal battle followed over the next 2 years. They finally married in September of 1840, a day before Clara's 21st birthday, at which point they wouldn't have needed her father's permission anymore. On their wedding day, Robert gave Clara a diary that they used as a joint diary, as an autobiographical account of their musical life together. The song cycle Sasha sings tonight was composed only a few months before their marriage in 1840. Prior to 1840, Schumann wrote nearly exclusively piano music and chamber music. He did at one point even say that he didn't like writing vocal music, which is amazing to those of us in the opera and vocal fields because we know him as a composer of vocal music. But at one point in his life, he said he didn't really like it that much. But in 1840, he wrote nearly 150 art songs in that year alone, in what would be called his Liederjahr, or his year of song. People speculate that he was drawn to the art song form in 1840 because of the legal battle with Clara's father. He had this bitter mixture of the intensity of his love for Clara and the anxiousness and the uncertainty of their future together. Robert Schumann composed many of his most famous art songs and song cycles in 1840, including both Liederkreis cycles, Opus 24 and Opus 39, the Myrtenlieder of 26 songs, and the well-known Dichterliebe. Tonight's cycle is titled Frauenliebe und Leben, also composed in 1840. It's translated in English as A Woman's Love and Life. It is 8 songs to poems by Adalbert von Chamisso, in a cycle told from a woman's point of view about marrying her love and losing him to an early death. The piece is eerily prophetic for Robert and Clara, as he died at age 46 after only 16 years of marriage. The first song is a stunningly tender piece about the first time the speaker lays her eyes on her beloved, and how, since she first saw him, she seems to be blind, because she can see nothing else but him. The second song has a more jubilant musical feel to it, as she sings about how he is the greatest man of all. But we also learn in this song that she loves him from afar. He doesn't know her or hear her silent prayers for him. She prays that only the most worthy of women will make him happy to be his wife. In the third song, we discover that he has indeed noticed her and is courting her. But the musical feeling of the piece is actually rather agitated and anxious, as the speaker expresses her disbelief and wonders why he would ever choose her to love. The fourth song returns to the beautifully tender lyricism that Robert Schumann displays in the first song, as we hear about the ring on her finger sealing their engagement. We move to a much more upbeat and joyous song in the fifth of the cycle, as she sings about her wedding day and sings to her bridesmaids about leaving their unwed company. The sixth song is absolutely gorgeous, and it's actually my personal favorite in the whole cycle. It's the only one of the 8 in which she actually addresses her beloved right before her. 2 others in the cycle do have her speak to her husband, addressing him, but it's clear in both of them that he's not with her. One being the second song in the cycle where she admires him from afar, and then the other being the last one in the cycle when he has passed away. This one, though, is clear that she's directly addressing her husband. It starts very interestingly. She starts talking about how she is crying, how these liquid pearls on her cheeks are an unfamiliar feeling for her. We actually learn that she's talking about tears of joy at their marriage, their life together, and how they're going to have a child together. The seventh song is Unbridled Joy at Being a Mother, and she sings directly to her newborn. And in the eighth and final song, she says that her beloved has caused her pain for the very first time. He has died. What I want you to listen for is the piano part at the very end of the cycle, after Sasha has stopped singing in the eighth song. The piano part brings back the very first musical theme in the cycle when she sings of the first time she ever laid eyes on him. So as Sasha sings this fabulous Robert Schumann cycle, listen for that opening theme, the very first sounds you hear from the piano, and then listen for that theme again at the very end of the piece. Here's what Sasha had to say about programming Frauenliebe und Leben.
So the Schumann is very dear to my heart. I knew it about probably 10 or 20 years ago, and it's nice to revisit things that are old friends because they change. And that piece, which is translated A Woman's Life and Loves, of course shifted because now I am married and I do have kids, and the cycle goes through this woman's love in her both relationship and life, and that has been really interesting to revisit. So the reason I put the program together is to feature women, and it's works by women and works revolving around women. So the Rossini being about Joan of Arc, the Frauenliebe being about essentially Schumann's wife, Clara Schumann, and then finally finishing with 3 world premieres by women. So it's meant to be a celebration of women.
After those 2 sets about women, Sasha has programmed a final set of 3 songs, all composed by women. These are 3 of the 16 songs Sasha commissioned over the course of the pandemic. 16 songs she's titled Songs in a Time of Silence. And these 3 received their world premiere tonight. Not only are all 3 composers women, but all 3 have ties to Texas. Sasha will tell you a little bit more about that in her introduction to the set in the recital itself. The first of the 3 is composed by Missy Mazzoli to a text by Royce Vavrek, and on the surface it references a painting by Rembrandt that it actually shares a title with, Self-Portrait with Disheveled Hair. But listen closely and you'll find another layer of meaning, one that speaks to the experience of creating art during the pandemic. The second song is titled That Night, music by Hilary Purrington, text by Mark Campbell, about a night in New York City. And Sasha ends the recital with a very fun piece titled Dear Colleagues, music by Renee Orth and text by Colleen Murphy, about the challenges of motherhood during a pandemic. Here's Sasha on these 3 songs.
During the George Floyd Black Lives Matter moment, a friend of mine sent me a lyric, and then from this lyric it became a song by Kamala Sangram. And it was just a spontaneous happening, but something sort of sparked in me of creating music right now, and that is something we can do in an undistilled, really wonderful way. Doing new music right now doesn't hinge on a performance. So I put together a project of commissioning 16 songs. About half of them are women, and we are going to put this project together for an eventual premiere, but in the meantime, we're doing a commercial release of them. So I'm making a recording in a couple months, and when Houston invited me to do a recital, I thought, well, why not feature a couple of the songs? One of them literally was sent to me like a week ago. So these are freshly written responses to now. One of them is somewhat comic. It's by Renee Orth, and it's about parenting during the pandemic and the average amount of work time a parent gets working from home. It was written about in the Wall Street Journal as 3 minutes and 24 seconds that the average parent gets. So the song, conveniently, is exactly 3 minutes and 24 seconds. And the singer goes back and forth from interview and work to the kids, letting the hamster out of the cage. It's very funny. Before that is a song about New York by Hilary Purrington, who went to Rice. And she and Mark Campbell, who wrote the lyric, wanted to kind of focus on New York and celebrate it, the energy of the city that came together during the pandemic. And it's also got a certain 1930s feeling. That's the New York we all love. So that's one of the songs. And then the third song is by Missy Mazzoli, and it's actually connected to a Rembrandt painting and the idea of self-portraiture and how artists right now, even though we are stuck and we can't do our thing, we're still creating art. And that a self-portrait is a moment in time capturing the essence of a person. And that what I'm doing by commissioning a song is also a snapshot in time of where I am. So that is by Missy Mazzoli and Royce Favric. And I should say, Missy and Royce wrote an opera which was going to be performed here in Houston, which is called Breaking the Waves. So Houston obviously has had to postpone their season, but I still wanted to celebrate Missy because she was about to have her music featured here.
We're very glad Sasha is featuring Missy. Of course, we're very sad not to have Missy Mazzoli's Breaking the Waves on our season this year, but thrilled to have this song in the program tonight. Lastly, we did ask Sasha if she could talk a little bit about the recital, what she wanted you, the audience, to take away from her program tonight.
Well, I think the idea of a recital is to connect with the human experience. And maybe one aspect of that is to escape from the moment, is to be in another realm, whether it's to have a comforting experience during a difficult period, or to, remember someone or something. I think that a recital is an opportunity to connect to the heart, connect to the soul. So I hope that this recital is that for the viewers, that it is enjoyable, meaningful, emotional, and soothing in some way.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you, everyone, for joining me tonight for the pre-show. I hope you had a good time hearing about the incredible music Sasha and Kirill will perform for you. Now it's about time for the recital to go live on Marquee TV and hgo.org/digital. We're so excited for all of you to experience this recital. And remember, if you haven't logged into your accounts, go do it now. Thanks, everyone, for coming to our watch party and our pre-show event. I am off. Everyone enjoy the show.